YouTube, and welcome to Theola Gaming. For those who don't know, we're a channel where we discuss, as you'd guess from the title, God and current issues and just Christian living in general while playing various games. Tonight, our various
And
games are,
experiencing technical difficulties.
and that too. But if we do that, you probably won't be hearing any of this, which you won't be anyway, because this is a trial run. But back to the topic at hand. Tonight we're playing Age of Empires 2 HD. With me tonight, I'm your host, Jesse, and with me tonight we have Joel. Say
Oh,
hi, Joel.
hello.
And you came in, you were just lagged, I think. And Jacob
G'day, how you going?
and Adam.
Hi, I was first last time, but now I'm not.
Yeah, I'm going to mix the order up, then no one feels left out. Anyway, except I'm always first because I'm king here.
I didn't vote for you.
I said king. I was born to this. So tonight we're discussing the topic of refugees. So, I mean, I was going to do an intro off the cuff. What was I thinking?
See, this
So,
is why we need a week to get everything down.
yeah, I think I overestimate my improv abilities a bit. So,
No, I mean, don't forget, it's also like a different circumstance from what you're normally used to.
yeah,
I mean, just because you can improv in one area doesn't, mean you can improv, like, because this is essentially like radio almost, but, well, it's a stream, or whatever it is, and, we're playing games, so you're trying to do multiple things at the one time.
yeah.
Different environment, different atmosphere.
Alright, so our topic tonight is refugees. Come to think of it, I don't really want to define refugees. Or do we? Do you reckon we should actually define what a refugee is, or is that pretty obvious to everyone?
Oh, I think it could help.
I mean, so long as it's probably a good idea just to give a basic definition of any term that we're going to be talking about so that everyone's on the same page. Everyone being, the audience as well.
Yeah.
Especially if you're talking about a younger audience, perhaps, if they're not familiar with it. Like this could very well be someone's first introduction to the topic.
That's true.
And, you want to do it well.
Right, so tonight we're going to be talking about refugees. So just a quick background. What do I want to call it? Just quickly for anyone who doesn't know, refugees are basically people who've been driven from their home by war or persecution, and they go to seek refuge in. Did we crash? There we go.
No?
They go to seek refuge and shelter in a country other than their own, or even just a region other than their own. Currently, as you might have heard, there's big issues going on in the world about just the sheer number of refugees, as well as issues that face the host countries with clashes of culture and the like. And we'll be discussing some of those later. But first, let's just talk generally on the topic of why should we help people fleeing war and persecution in their countries? Should we help people? And how much? So, who wants to kick us off? Who has thoughts on that matter?
I guess first of all, I mean, being in Australia, we're in a very interesting position where we're only 22 million people out of over 7 billion, and of that, we're definitely one of the richest countries. Yet, one also the most geographically isolated.
We have one thing a lot of countries don't have too, which is huge amounts of land.
You have quite the low population density.
We also have terrible internet.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I think if you want good quality internet, go to Korea. Well, that is South Korea. Don't go to North Korea for your internet. That's a bad idea.
Nice Korea, naughty Korea.
Oh, but they hear nothing but the truth.
And North Korea is best Korea. Don't be knocking North Korea.
Well, guess we just lost all our North Korean visitors. Who-
Oh.
They totally allow YouTube
No,
there.
yeah.
We had heaps.
I'm defending North Korea, okay?
No, I'm just saying
Nothing
in
wrong
general.
with North Korea.
How on earth did we have North Korean visitors to begin with?
That was the point of my joke.
Look, if you're North Korean and you're watching this, we love you. You're welcome.
Actually, I've heard that lots of
Congratulations on
people.
getting out of North Korea.
No, there's like proxies and stuff now. Like people have
Really?
gotten sophisticated in North Korea. Also, the government's gotten a bit lax, I've heard. They're sort of letting a lot more slip than what they used to, realizing sort of the benefits of modernization. I hate that term, but like, especially in regards to business increasing and so forth. See, we're totally great at talking about refugees, aren't we?
Well,
Oh.
that's why this is a
Well-
test episode.
Yeah, I know. That's why I didn't care too much about the
And North
tangent.
Korea really like relates in a sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
And speaking also of things that are related to refugees, I'm researching anarchy in this game right now, so there's going to be some more.
Well, I've just got cartography and working my market, so we can get some international trade happening.
Oh man.
Yeah.
This-
Well, I'm working
this
out
is
how to build.
relevant.
I'm working out how to build huts instead of tents, so also relevant. Moved up to a shanty town from a tent village.
Solid.
And I'm just booming.
But yeah, I have like, well, this was our topic, and we were playing Age of Empires. I was thinking on the irony of, we're talking about those fleeing war and persecution while slaughtering our enemies in war and persecution.
Well, to be fair, it is a video game, and most video games,
Yeah, I know.
you know, kind of violent. Unless we were doing, you know, economic, diplomatic, I should say, or cultural victories on Civ. Why do I have so
That's
many people
more violent.
They're not violent, but there's all sorts of ethical dilemmas with those victories too.
What
You
ethics?
just buy out. I'm the you know, the leader of the world because I bought out all the smaller places.
Or wiped out their culture.
Hmm.
Or just flew
What are you
away
doing
to
on
another.
that
Man, it's alright.
house.
Replace it with a better one. Replace it with a better one. It's okay.
So I mean, Jesse, on the like for a topic like this, will you say, have a few like keep us on topic? Will you say, broadly speaking, like you might want to cover people fleeing, refugees in Australia, and say the Syrian or the European migrant crisis, and those might be two broad topics. And within that, you can say, all right. Will you have like a list of dot points that you want to cover, and when you feel that we have covered all of the stuff from one dot point to a reasonable degree that you're happy with, we could, you know, you can say, all right, well, changing topic slightly, what do you think about this topic? Anyone have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm thinking I might go for a setup like that. So, like the podcast that I've sort of been getting a lot of inspiration from what I can gather from their comments on the show, how they work is, during the week they have like, they set up show notes between them, like the various members of the show put points they want to talk about on the thing. They set up some sort of rough formula for, like they have their regular segments and they put in things that want to be discussed. So I'm thinking I might end up doing something like that. So I'll work up to sort of dot points for us about what to discuss. Couple of articles if relevant, or just spam of articles just to give information. Doesn't matter if we read them all.
Actually, even if we were to talk about a particular article, I mean, you can link to stuff in the comments, but then again, I guess it ultimately depends on what target audience you're trying to reach, because if you're trying to reach, you know, younger kids, they might, or younger people, I should say, sending them to a technical or jargon-filled article might not be the best way to do it if this is supposed to be an introduction or...
Yeah.
But no, I do like the idea of having dot points that everyone's aware of. Because whilst it's like structure without actually being structure. It's not like we're going to chat for 5 minutes about this and 10 minutes about this. It's like, alright, I'm happy with the depth to which we've discussed this thing, we can move on to this thing now. And it kind of appears like a natural flow. And like, we all know where it's going, but to the audience, it seems a bit more natural.
Yeah. Hey, someone stole my sheep. Thanks, Jay-Z, with your market cart going past.
Oh, whoops. Didn't even, oh, yeah.
Alright, so refugees, what did we get up to? We were talking about should we help them, what basis do we have to that? So I wonder if this is going... No. I won't say that.
Is anyone going with no, we shouldn't?
I don't think in this chart, particularly in our age demographic, that's... Well, sorry, no, correct that. I think, at least I do want to help refugees a bit more than we have. Because that's kind of a thing that's been a bit poorly done.
Well, I know there are... I mean, among, like, our specific demographic that is middle class, educated, and Christian for 3 of us, it is definitely the majority view, but I know, like, within my own house, I think I'm the only one who thinks we should help refugees. My 2 younger sisters, if they even care at all, follow more along Mum's lines of Australia is for the Australians and refugees cause problems. They're not as strong as Mum. She's kind of frustrating like that. But there's definitely dissent. We represent a bit of a skewed view, but
I mean, if I were to poll my household, barring my sister, who's, quite young, she's, 14. I know my father certainly would probably use the term, at least for the, say, Australian, like asylum seeker issue, he would probably use the term queue jumper.
Yeah, no, we're full. That's a common word you often hear.
F off.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. Bumper sticker.
Yeah, come on now.
so briefly, do you reckon we should mention family things in the episode? Do you reckon they'd care? It's
I
probably
probably
something to
wouldn't.
watch out for.
Oh, yeah, good
I
point.
probably wouldn't.
Yeah, I'd or not
I
doing that
mentioned
too.
general society, yes. General society, I would. It's
Yeah.
fine.
Or public
I mean,
figures.
I guess if we were to say, like... Yeah. No, I mean, that's a good point.
But anyway,
I suppose in a general sense, you can say, like, I know some people who would use the term queue jumpers rather than specifically saying that I'm related to them.
yeah. Well, you probably could
But
even
I think
say,
my military
I mean, without
standards-
being specific, just say like within. You could even go within my own family.
Yeah,
Though
without.
knowing is probably, I know some people. It's probably the safer way to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, see, like, because I haven't done anything like this before, so that's something that'll might take some getting used to, like, restricting what I say.
Yeah.
Being conscious of the fact that this will be put online and, might very well be there forever. And whilst we aren't, named, I mean, we're named, but it's not like, here's my tax file number.
Oh,
Yeah, then let's not do that.
I couldn't even tell you if you asked me. Put it like saved on a Word document somewhere. I just copy and paste it whenever I need it.
Yeah, pretty much. So, tax, hey?
So there is an interesting question in that, that's probably a bit for later.
Tax money going to,
Yeah,
to refugees and that, because that's where the money comes. Like that's really what we're talking about. Like taxpayers' money going to it. Otherwise, like yeah, let's help them. Oh wait, we have to pay for it. Oh, hang on.
and there's also the sort of implicit understanding in taxation that people who live in a country have their money taken from them for the good of them and that country. They're sort of paying for the upkeep and the infrastructure and the governance of that country. I mean, you get this with all sorts of other issues too, where people are like, oh, I don't want to pay for roads, I don't drive, or I don't want to pay for public schooling, I don't care about those kids. But there is the issue of you're essentially spending money on people from another country or for another country, directly in foreign aid and indirectly in refugees, because I mean, there's always money that you have to spend on them regardless of if they actually stay or not. Even just processing refugees costs money, or keeping them out.
Hmm.
I have to admit, it's not anything
I mean,
I've... go on.
I mean, ultimately, it's. Sorry, I was just going to say. Ultimately, it's a. What's the correct term to use? You know, luck essentially, where you were born, you didn't have any choice over it.
Wait, you mean you didn't choose your respawn point?
Man, noob, come on.
Yeah, that's the thing I think people don't really... I mean, this is something people struggle with in general, is seeing other people as human. But people really seem to have trouble putting themselves in other people's shoes. And often I've found with, like some of the people I know who support refugees kind of have that thinking of, well, we'd want them to do it if it was from us. They're running away from war and persecution. Would we like other people to leave them die? And that's why they support, it beyond any like ideology. But people tend to think it's very us versus them, or oh, we're better off. It's because they're so backwards and they have all these issues in their culture that they're like this. We don't want them bringing their problems here.
Yeah, victim blaming as well.
I've heard that a lot. It's such a narrow way, I guess, of looking at things. Just comes out of ignorance more than anything else, but it's pretty prevalent.
Yeah, and it's really common. It's surprisingly common though, and because in a way it's like, well, that's their problem. I still watch the footage in the weekend. It doesn't really think about the country's well-being, just in terms of a generic sort of thing. And to be honest, in our daily lives, we don't really get affected by what happens overseas because our neighbours are across water. But the reality for a lot of people's lives around the world is very much affected.
Well, having country borders that are actually not coastlines.
Why are you messaging me?
Oh, you're lagging, bro?
Oh yeah. Like I've got the screen up. Ascendant Edge's ping hit 6,000.
Oh, really? Oops.
Okay. I think that's like there's an interesting aspect to it's their problem though that is I sort of became aware of it after the earthquake in Nepal. Seeing just because the real trouble with that earthquake wasn't obviously the destruction it caused was really bad, but the real trouble came because the country had no jobs, no economy, so all the young men had left, like all the fit, strong young people. Presumably the women had left too, a lot of them, but all the youth had left to go out to other countries to go and work and send money home to support family. I guess we didn't put them on teams, or did someone run them?
No, they were on a team. I just killed one,
Oh, cool. I haven't even seen them. Are they
making some refugees.
incompetent?
Sorry.
Yeah.
They're just not being very aggressive.
Typical. It's, oh, you can play on the easiest and not die straight away, but the enemy's going to sit there and do nothing. Or you can play one level up and get absolutely massacred.
How it works, right?
Yeah. Alright, so back to my point. Yeah, the real issue was that the country had no one left to rebuild. All the people who were young, strong, capable had left the country because they kind of had to. There was nothing there for them. And with refugees, you kind of have the same thing happening. If everyone, or at least with permanent settlers, you have all these people leave, especially the young people or the educated people or the skilled people. They're all the ones that leave, go to another country to seek their fortune there, and they stay there. And so at the end of the crisis, the country can be left in a pretty bad way afterwards. It can take years to recover. Sometimes they never do. Though that hasn't happened anytime recently.
And we also, I guess, exist in a more global society so that, you know, each country doesn't exist in isolation. Each country's circumstances are a result of what other countries have done. Perhaps due to, you know, say, the economy or, you know, actual more military events.
Or
Doesn't make any
espionage,
sense,
proxy
did it?
wars.
Yeah, so you say it better than I do.
Because that's,
Each
in a
country
way,
doesn't
that is
exist in
what...
isolation.
Yeah. Like, not to point fingers too much because it's obviously not clear and war never has a single cause, but a lot of the issues in the Middle East are because of proxy wars and conflict between this influence conflict between like Saudi Arabia and Iran, America, and Russia in some cases. That's why they haven't been working together against ISIS. There's this aim to destabilize for means such as sometimes just economical means, for ideological means, wanting every country to have a democracy. Even well-meaning means can often really affect another country. So that's a complete tangent.
No,
So-
well, I mean, I kind of.
But
put us onto that
it's
tangent,
relevant
right?
and it's important to the. I think you recognise that the reasons why people are refugees are often a lot more complicated than just the situation in that country itself. There's a whole world that's influencing what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just like people in one country just decided, oh, we're gonna up and leave because of something that happened and move somewhere else. It's like often, you know, it could be an international thing. You know, sometimes it might be natural, like a natural disaster that requires foreign aid or whatever, but sometimes it'll be actions of other countries.
And it's pretty sad, like, see, like, it's just happening at an increasing rate as well. It's not just like it's a problem's going away. There are more and more refugees continually because of a variety of reasons, war being just one of them.
And just a simple reason that there's more and more people in the world.
Good point.
Yes, and the amount of land that we have to do things with isn't actually getting any bigger. Well, unless I guess you count China making new islands or whatever they're doing.
That's not exactly for farming, but let's not get into that.
Yeah.
And there's also, like, feeding into that, there's sort of the issue of what quality of
What?
life. Yeah, they kind of got to. So I never built a military unit that whole game. I think I'm gonna have to work on my Age of
GoldenEye.
Empires playing
GoldenEye
to
killed
not
them
be completely boring. Right, it's just Let's just get into another match. Start
Alright.
one up quick. We're still discussing.
And the discussion actually seems
Yeah.
to be working pretty well.
Yeah.
Like, I guess there are moments of silence, but if you had, you know, the dot points that you wanted to address, and then we can just seamlessly move on.
Yeah.
I mean, we do seem to be able to spend a while on each topic, on each, you know, individual thing that we're talking about.
And I was hesitant at first to think, could we really fill an hour on refugees? But we haven't even got to any of the points I had planned yet. So we can totally do this.
No,
No, it's pretty easy to fill in now.
Yeah. Alright, well, I'm in the menu, so I'll host again.
All right. Got your invite. Hang on.
Let's go Celts this time. Whoops, let's not click that yet. What were we on? What topic?
uh,
Oh, I
you
was
should
talking
remind me
about.
again, Jesse, because that wasn't, it didn't like that.
So I was talking about
Can we,
quality of life. So how much are we willing to sacrifice for refugees? Like how much do we? What quality of life do we expect for ourselves and for other people around the world?
Yes.
Is Islands a map?
yeah.
Oh, there it is.
Oh, yeah.
Found it.
They're gonna do all.
Cool. I don't know. Joel said so, and why not?
Are we having enemies, or?
Oh, yeah.
Do you want to go standard just for so
Yeah, it
it's
is.
not quite as much of a
that was. Did they even have anything to fight with, or were they utterly pathetic?
pretty much just utterly pathetic. I walked into their towns with like a troop of Huskarls and 2 trebuchets and killed 3 guys. So,
Yeah, that's why I was hesitant to do it, because I remember. It might even have been Age of Empires I was playing. But basically, just strategy games like this, if you set it on the lowest difficulty, it's like pathetic. It's like give it to your 5-year-old to play kind of level.
Go bake a cake and come back every 15 minutes.
Yeah. Hey, you could probably do that in
What's
a normal
Spanish
strategy
first?
game.
That's
all be
Do you want a
Spanish.
team?
Oh yeah, Joel,
Why-
you're not
why
on a
is it-
team.
I should probably yeah. Whoops, that does help
Wait,
a little bit. Yeah, okay.
So we all want to be Spanish? Was that a thing we were
No,
doing?
no, I thought it was Korean, so I picked Spanish instead. So
Well, I was joking, but sure, why not? Everyone else is Spanish by now.
Hey, at least we're gonna get huge trade bonuses. Come on, trade cogs.
doesn't
Oh, that's
stack.
true.
It doesn't
Uh,
stack.
Ah,
That's why you
it's a
want to
shame.
vary. That's why you vary it up. You don't all go the same.
no, it's okay. We'll just have like fleets of cannon galleons
Yeah.
and no one will survive.
That's why I picked
We-
Spanish first. I'm like, Canadians.
Yeah, as I was saying, quality of life, because I mean, that's the other side. I'll get back to this later, but that's the other side of the refugee issue is about those who aren't refugees are just fleeing for economic reasons. But
Economic migrant or
yeah,
well, because
um,
that's the thing though is if let's say Australia takes refugees, right? Do they get Australian minimum standards like Australian minimum wage, etc., but do they get a UN set minimums, which is probably much lower than what the Australian standard would be?
would that even exist? Is that a thing?
Well, there's I guess we call human rights. But do we just meet them human rights and just leave it at that, or do we actually let them integrate into Australian society in a way they can live a lifestyle that Australians live? You know what I mean? It's very different.
As in, do we do the bare minimum to look after people, or do we actually treat them like human beings? I think we treat them like human beings.
Well, I think that's what the bare
Well,
minimum is for.
the bare minimum is treated like human beings.
Like, if we're talking about UN as
As in
bare
give them-
minimum, then
But like if someone comes to Australia and they want to live in Australia, they're entitled to the same rights and freedoms and responsibilities as anyone who's born in Australia. Surely.
Correct, but I guess the question then becomes, if they don't have money and they're purely, I mean, like, what do they then do? Are they bound to responsibilities of paying taxes and things, or or do they get
Well,
Australian citizen Centrelink, or do they get a different thing?
I'm not sure what the system is, but I feel like we should. It depends. Like, are we talking refugees here, or are we talking just migrants?
Well, migrants have to come here intentionally through legal channel, and by that I mean with like passports and things. So it's a bit different, and they're on their own back. So they usually don't get welfare payments. Migrants don't.
Hmm.
yeah, I think often to migrate you need a
Have to show
job.
economic course. Yeah.
Like, often you need to be coming for a job beforehand. I mean, there's probably other ways to get in and get the right passport to do it. But you definitely need to be, to get in legally as an economic migrant, you need to be pretty well qualified and, like, there's got to be, the kind of sad part is that you've got to be high quality, highly educated, very easily employable, someone that Australia kind of wants, that will strengthen Australia. Which I think is pretty sad that that's sort of the only people we'll let in willingly. I mean, it's probably broader than what I know, but we sort of look at people's value in their, how much can they give our economy, how much benefit can they give us, and that's why we let them in. Obviously, we do have the refugee system as well, but
The interesting thing with refugees when it comes to like economics is that a lot of the two things that get trotted out like simultaneously and awkwardly by a lot of folks who have issues with us taking in refugees, they will either come and like steal all our welfare, or they will come and steal all our jobs, which is interesting
second
because
one's-
one would think that they contradict each other. But like the truth is, a lot of these folks, when a lot of the complaint, like you guys have seen these things on Facebook that go around that are like, oh, people on the pension get this much, refugees get this much, it's not fair, we should look after our own first, and that kind of thing. People who didn't care about pensioners 2 days ago, they saw this meme, and now anyway, the whole issue with that is, a lot of the people who are coming to Australia as refugees are people who had highly skilled employment and training in the countries that they were living in before they came here. It's not that they were poor and needed a better life. That's the reason they're coming to Australia. It's, their life was disrupted by war and issues like that. They're looking for security. They're looking for stability, but they're not looking for like handouts or anything like that. And that shows itself in that statistically, within just a few years of migrating to Australia, the majority of refugees are a net benefit to the Australian economy. And I can't link you the stats on that straight up, but you can look it up on Australian government websites if you want. They've actually done studies on it and found, yes, this is actually really good for our economy to have more refugees coming in. Initially there's a bit of a cost, but once they've settled in, they start contributing to society in a big way.
That's interesting. So, is that in terms of getting jobs, or is that like in terms of projects that they're working on? Because I'm just curious, given that the Australian unemployment is noticeable.
especially
Yeah,
where
it's not particularly high. Like, it's high high-ish. It's higher than it was a few years ago, but it's not on a worldwide scale. It's not that bad. And the thing with more people coming into the country is that while it does mean that there's more competition for the jobs that were there before, the simple fact that there's more people means there's more demand for stuff, which means jobs are created by simple virtue of the fact that there are people who need goods and services and are prepared to pay for them.
Fair point.
The trouble being, though, and like this is just the trouble with economics in general, is that those aren't in the same ratio, especially not, at least not industrialized. Like goods and services don't increase at the same rate, hence why, and we're doing pretty good for unemployment, but it's still something like 5%, which when you actually think of that, 5% of 20 million, that's a lot of people. Obviously there's other reasons for this, and sometimes it includes students and so forth, but I think there is a sort of real concern about like you can't just dismiss taking jobs offhand, because I don't know if you guys read my article on it or not, but I sort of said that a lot of refugees are educated. People tend to kind of think that oh, they're barbarians. Do they even have like spears where they come from? Have they even invented that yet? But a lot of people are highly educated, but at the same time, a lot aren't. And so you come in here, you get education for the low-skilled jobs, which is something there's a lot of competition for, and there's really hard to get just in general. So the argument I sort of put forward in my article was that letting people in, it's those who are already sort of struggling in Australia. Obviously not as much as the refugees, but a lot of the burden tends to fall on those poorer people who need the welfare, or who need that job that they don't need any requirements for. They're the ones facing the increased competition. That's the word. They're the ones who are fighting now for the same housing, and all these other things. So there is that aspect to it where helping people around the world can affect the people in our own society that we should be helping. I mean, people love throwing the elderly one around because we really don't do as much as we probably should for the elderly. I've never looked into it much, but they do seem to get a pretty pitiful wage. But it does bring up that issue of how much should each country help the world's poor, and how much should it help its own? Or even if.
Well, the fact is that when it comes to that particular issue, we have the ability to provide for those of our own that have fallen on hard times, and we at the same time have the ability to provide for those who are coming from overseas. Unfortunately, and here's the thing, like there's so much money that our government could have, if they were to close some tax loopholes for really wealthy folks and that sort of thing. The problem is that there's been a big outcry against these things when they come in. There was the mining tax that the Gillard government kind of threw around the idea of, that got scrapped pretty quickly. I'm not sure, it might have even been by the Gillard government in response to the huge negativity. Certainly it didn't last long once Tony Abbott was in power.
Neither did the Gillard government.
Well, this is point being that if that thing had been a thing, it would have made billions for the Australian economy. With the money from the mining tax, they could have increased the pension, and they could have increased our refugee intake, and it wouldn't have hurt the mining industry noticeably. But people are like, no, we can't we can't tax the mines.
That's in fact, it wouldn't have a neutral effect, because as you know, particularly with the world commodity price going down, if there was a carbon tax in place right now, it actually would have been very bad. Bank Australia knocked off 500 jobs, BHP knocked off Fairview. There's been a few thousand jobs in the last month that have just dropped, because, particularly in the zinc industry and lead, just because of the world commodity price going down. So if there was a carbon tax on top of it, we would see, yes, we would have a bit more spending money in the short term, but the Australian economy as a whole would be crippled for a few years to come. And I guess that's one of those things of, you go for long term or do you go for short term? And that's not an easy decision to make because one involves less ability for welfare.
It's a bit of a... I mean, it doesn't quite come down to that. I mean, there's a bit of balance on both sides, because obviously,
Absolutely,
mines
balance.
do not
It's
run
not an easy
on...
one.
Yeah, like, mines don't run on a big deficit, or just big businesses in general. It's not like they're rolling in money all the time. They're often on a pretty tight budget. But the thing is, often a lot of that tight budget is because of things like exorbitant salaries for CEOs, or spending in investments, I guess, can work out in their own. But I mean, there are, maybe not so much with raw resources, that's kind of a troubled industry in general these days, but there's always ways that you can cut costs to make things like a carbon tax work without making killing prices for your actual goods.
The bottom line is that a small tax on the very rich would make a huge difference to the well-being of the very poor.
Yeah, that's right. Whether that tax is the carbon tax, another one's not the question. That's a different question. But I know the same you're coming from. I agree with is that you're basically taxing the upper end of the wealth bracket to help those who are really in need.
And, like, at the risk of, I know a lot of people feel entitled to the wealth that they've earned and get cross when you say that they should give more of it to the government or to poor people. But the truth is, like, if you're earning $200,000 a year and you get taxed for, like, 47% of your income or whatever massive chunk it is, if you can't live comfortably on still more than $100,000 a year, what have you done with your life that's a mistake? Much less if you're like a CEO of, like, if you're Gina Reinhardt and you have $27 billion, like, if you can't live comfortably on that, what's wrong with you?
Well, here we come down to sort of the viewpoint that we don't have
Altruism?
represented in this podcast, which is not everyone actually cares about equality or about helping other people. Like, as we touched on earlier, we seem to have this idea, especially in the West, of everything comes down to sort of what people do in their life. Circumstances are all in our own control. It's, oh, they're poor because they're lazy or they have some other problem. People tend to believe that we're responsible for our own fate, which is very often not true, or almost certainly not true in most cases. And they sort of believe...
angle, it's almost certainly not Christian either.
Yeah. And we sort of believe that the reason that we shouldn't bother helping other people because... It's okay, I lost my point ages ago. But there's that viewpoint there that we have no need to earn the poor. We just do the best with what we can, and don't have any part in anyone else's life, good or bad. That's a pretty common viewpoint now in the West. So you were saying?
Yeah, like, you see throughout the Bible, from the Old Testament, where throughout the Jewish law, there's all this, look after the poor, look after the foreigner in your country, These commandments are given to Israel because this is how God wants his people to live. And in the New Testament, like, Jesus does nothing but strengthen that message. So whatever like political theories you want to around, if you think capitalism's good, if you think socialism's good, if you think democracy is good, if you think democracy is bad, if you have whatever view, like at the bottom, at the end of the day, from a Christian theological point of view, you can't arrive at any position other than, hey, God cares about the less fortunate, and whether our government recognizes it or not, whether our secular society realizes it or not, we need to be prioritizing these people in how we do our ministry, how we do our service, how we use our resources.
Agreed.
Yeah. It's a difficult one, and I guess it's altruism debate. Is like these Australians are not wanting to are not very so they're reluctant to be like, oh yeah, I'm willing to give stuff that I've earned. I'm the entitled one. I worked 40 hours this week. I deserve 40 hours of pay. Why would I give it to someone who, etc. So, but it's because really it's what the majority votes for that will eventually decide what happens. So, pretty important thing to like discuss how I guess we change Australia's mindset.
So just to go back a bit, like we mentioned just before about Christian point of view and why we as Christians should care about it from the Bible, but Adam, as an atheist, what do you think on this issue? Why should we care about refugees? Why should we? Is there sort of a basis for that? Or just the poor in general?
I guess it's we're all human, and the golden rule which pervades much other religions as well is like, if were I in that position, would I be grateful for assistance? There's no script or creed or book I look to for guidance. It's just, I guess, what I again do unto others as I'd like done to me. So I would think that where possible, and again we have already discussed tonight some of the issues, what standard do we assist people to? Do we assist people at the expense of the people in our own societies? But ultimately I think we should do something, because it's the fate of someone's circumstances. It's not entirely their doing. If someone, I think that's the narrative, like I guess you might say the American dream is I guess a common example of it, where if you work hard enough, you can become a CEO, or you can become an astronaut or whatever, even if you're born in abject poverty. But in reality, if you're born into better circumstances, you're probably more likely to do better. So it's not just there are outside influences to how well you do, and I guess that should be taken into account. I don't know if did that make any sense, or did I just talk for 2 minutes without?
I guess it's more like you're coming from a just almost like a common sense approach without necessarily a basis other than human decency. Is that kind of what I'm just trying to bounce off what you're saying? Is that what you're coming from?
Well, yeah, I guess human decency, looking out for each other. You can't. If everyone, if everyone's ultimately selfish, you're not going to have a society. Because everyone's going to stab each other in the back at the first opportunity. So, I guess there's obviously good discussions to be had about what level of altruism you want to have, but I think ultimately it is a good thing. But I guess people of varying political stripes will see different levels as more acceptable than others.
Right, so to take us back to something specific about refugees, I don't think I actually said it before, but part of the... Actually, let's talk about the Australian system first before we move on to the European situation. I can't even think of what we call them. Internment camps? I was going to call them concentration camps, but that might be a bit inflammatory.
Detention centers.
Oh,
Concentration
it's accurate.
camps,
Well,
I think
they're not
that's
that bad.
Australia's
I wouldn't
order.
call that. That kind of diminishes what
Oh.
a concentration camp actually was.
Mind you,
But-
I think they're not great for a number of reasons. The meta reason is that if you complain about these things, you just go to jail, which is kind of ridiculous in a lot of that just doesn't even make sense. How it's even legal. Anyway,
I find it kind of amusing that sort of double standard we see with that. Like, this government came in and was basically like, yeah, all information about asylum seekers and detention centers is now illegal. You can't say anything about it. Nothing will report on it. Government's controlling all this information. I mean, if this happened over in a country we don't like we joked about it with North Korea before, everyone's like, oh, those barbarians with such their stupid primitive society. Happens in our own with the asylum seekers. Everyone's like, oh yeah, okay. And they were like, hey, they stopped the boats. Isn't that great? It's just funny that it highlights that sort of inconsistency in a lot of people's beliefs, that on one instance they'll completely decry something just out of sheer ideology, and on the other they'll accept it without even really thinking about it because it's about something they nominally agree with.
Or coming from a party, say, that, they voted for or typically agree with. It's, in a political sense, and depending obviously which person it is.
mind you, and it's interesting, and I've actually written two. I think Joey had two. Various members letters of, "Oi, mate, please." A bit
Yeah.
more formal than that, but you get the idea. I think it's actually good to do, even though it doesn't. It may not. I'm not saying it doesn't. It may not change anything. It might. At least you've done more than just complained in private. You've actually gone through the channels and said, "Look, you're representing me in a federal or state level, particularly federal because it's a federal issue. Can you not be a dropkick?" Like, it's if you're representing someone, I think it's fair to actually listen to the people you're representing.
Well, I mean, that's the whole idea of a representative democracy.
Correct.
Oh, that's so idealistic though. Like if
Right. I mean,
Part of the
I'm not
trouble
saying
is that
action's
they
gonna change
are
anything.
listening to people. They're just people that don't think like us.
yeah, this is true. This is
Oh
true.
dear.
There are.
Here we go.
If you've ever read the comments on well, take Ewan Jones, who's the member for Townsville. He came out a few months back saying the government should take 50,000 Syrian refugees. We've got room for them. Townsville can take some. And the number of people who were just like, "F off, we're full," on his Facebook page afterwards, they're just like reading some of these comments and like, yeah, do you people even think? Come on.
Like he's actually trying to do something. Yeah.
So that actually segues nicely because I actually do a bit of working with specifically homeless people in Townsville. Our church does a lot with people who are down on their luck. We give out food boxes, or we give out furniture, or just help them with things that they need. And over the years, I've because refugees come here under that sort of system. They need furniture, they need housing and food sometimes. So hear a bit about it, and there is definitely a circumstance where that gets pretty difficult. I mean, it's hard finding the room for these people, or finding the supplies. I mean, we're not government funded or anything. We do this out of our church tithe, like our offering. That's where it all comes out of. And we sort of do that to fill in the gaps left by the government system. And this is with our current refugee intake.
Yeah, and
So
that's
there
part
is-
of the, the Christian view, seeing it as a present need, like actually willingly giving, because they see like and this is a Christian thing. It's like people are made in God's image and are worthy of being treated well. Like it's weighs on people's hearts directly in Townsville and Wada.
Yeah, right. But point I'm getting to is that, like, arguments that we're full. I mean, there's some weight to them. I'm not sure we could. I think they were saying like 1,000, 2,000 refugees for Townsville. I mean, at the moment we could. Actually, no, we couldn't. I was thinking, oh, there's plenty of houses around at the moment. Then I realized, oh yeah, that's because we've got no jobs at the moment. That's kind of more of a problem. But I mean, just because people don't come here straight to a job. They come straight to a house. They need to be housed somewhere. They need to find a job. Often they'll need to be trained in a job or even just the language. I mean, they can have a doctorate in their home country, but that means nothing if they can't speak English. So there's training,
This
there's
is true.
expenses. There's often counselling as well, because these are people coming from warfare. It's very difficult, no matter what country you are, to do big intakes. Like, that's what Germany's finding at the moment. Because they've had, I think they might even have reached the million now. They've had 1 million people cross over their borders this year, 1 million refugees, and they're beyond. They can't cope. They couldn't cope once they hit about 600,000. They're staying in schools over there. They're setting up big camps now, sort of run by the military. That sounds ominous, but like just tent camps to sort of house the people.
Especially Germany.
Yeah, that's a good point. No, Germany, we're not
Awkward.
implying that. We probably will get lots of European viewers. So, but yeah,
We're talking
Just
about
the sheer
Awesome.
logistics of it, that they can't cope. There's not the infrastructure, there's not the housing, there's not the jobs or the workers to support them. And this is Germany in terms of like economy and world living. They're nearly the top. Like, I think only a couple of the Scandinavian countries are higher than them.
And I think it's hard to fathom how much 60,000 people actually is.
600,000 people.
Oh yeah, sorry. How many people that actually is.
Oh yeah. And there is also, like, it's hard to say this sort of properly, but cultural assimilation is definitely a thing. I mean, you can't just have countries with lots of cultures in them that don't mix and sort of assimilate or compromise to a degree, don't come to some sort of common understanding. I mean, sure, you can have different cultures and so forth in it, and that's good, but if they don't mix or don't interact with each other well enough, you get ghettos, you get gangs, all sorts of problems. Like a lot of the tribal fighting in the Middle East sort of follows that pattern, or just tribal fighting in general. People who don't mix very well, don't get on, they don't sort of try and work together for a common identity. You have all these issues. And so there's work that needs to be done on both sides to assimilate people, to teach them our language, our culture, our way of doing things, even just our paperwork. There's a lot of this work that has to be put in to get people to actually become a part of society beyond living here, having a job, and any healthcare and like psychological needs that need to be taken care of. And that's often that's a step that even Christians, like, I don't want to say don't want to take. It's probably more they don't even know that's a step that has to happen. I think that's probably more often the case. But as much as we want to help refugees or let them in, we forget that there's that part that we can do on our own to sort of help these people, to go meet with refugee families, sort of teach them some of this stuff, or even just be their friend, be their contact in the culture, someone they can turn to about all the strange rituals and stuff that we have. Like, what is Halloween? I mean, that's strange to Australians too, but what's Christmas? Why do we do these things? How's our government work? These things, even just TV, like, we love to laugh at those strange TV shows from over Japan, but to the Japanese, they're pretty normal. There's all these little things about cultures that you don't notice when you're in them, but can be a huge problem to people trying to get into them. And so that's definitely one thing that we're sort of weak at as Christians, and that we could definitely do more, or just in general, because it's not just Christians that support letting asylum seekers in. But there is that aspect of there's work to be put in to actually make people an Australian beyond letting them in and paying for them.
Absolutely.
It's a good point.
Makes sense.
Alright, so we've probably gotten... I get the feeling it's been quite a long time by now. So shall we wrap this up?
It's 10 to 12. Sure.
Alright, so anyone got any final thoughts or things to add before we close?
Well, I think that was a good example of, you know, what we can do when we actually discuss a topic.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. It went well, and I'm keen for next week. Are we gonna hit this topic again, like, properly next week, or are we just gonna move on to something else? What do you think?
I can hit this again. Unless, like,
Alright.
I might rewatch this, see... Because we got pretty on topic after a while there. We might even be able to
Oh, yeah,
use
we
it.
got-
So I'll
Well,
have a
the
look
thing
at
is
it
you can
later.
just, it would be possible for you to record an introduction and then, you know, edit it in.
Yeah, like, just a few cuts and I can probably make this work, but I'll check it out. But we might benefit from a bit more... Oh, I think we did okay. I'll get back to us on that. So I'll have a look at the video,
Yeah, okay.
see what we said, and decide for next week. But anyway, for now, let's cut this recording instead of talking about